Welcome, Ecamm family, to Let's Learn Ecamm Live. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Neil Faramond, and I'm one of the moderators here at Ecamm. So if you're new here and you're new to Ecamm, welcome. It's great to have you. So today I'm going to be spending the next hour or so walking you through some of the fundamentals of Ecamm. So hopefully that's going to get you up and running. So please feel free to ask any questions, but start them with a Q so I can find them. All right, let's take a quick look in the chat. Who do we have already? Goodness me, we have a few people already. I'll just say hello quickly. Hello, Jeremy. Nice to see you. Hi, Lux. Thank you so much for stopping by. Really kind of you. Hey, Saeed. Paul, Mr. Moderator. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Val. All right. Let's crack on, shall we? So for those of you who are new here, let's go through Ecamm Live. I'm just going to go, first of all, into live demo mode. So let me just click on that. Ooh, live demo mode. Come on. There we go. All right. So this is Ecamm Live. Now, your Ecamm may look very different than mine, but what I've done here is I've opened up all of these windows for you to show you typically what Ecamm Live would look like in a default setup. So all of these panels you can open or close, and they're all movable around your desktop. Now, I typically don't have all these panels open. It all depends on what you're actually using Ecamm for. As you know, Ecamm is a live streaming tool, and you can use it for podcasting, live streaming, recording your workshops, your courses, whatever you want. It's very versatile. So you may not have to have all these windows open. It's entirely up to you. It's a personal preference. So I'm just going to close a few of these down because I'm not going to be bothering with sound effects for now. We're not going to have any Zoom calls or interviews or anything like that. But I'm going to keep Camera Switcher and other things up and running, because I'm going to show you a few of those things later, and obviously all the comments as well. So when you just first install Ecamm Live, there's a few things that I personally like to do to change things to make my life a little bit easier when I'm doing my broadcasts and creating my production. So we'll go into preferences. I've got the mouse here so you'll be able to see anything that I'm hovering over and make it sort of large or small. And I've also got some keystroke commands that'll pop up as well every time I do some keyboard shortcuts. So to get to preferences, it's Apple key, comma. And a couple of things that I change straight off the bat is I'll go into my general settings and I'll turn off the show program window while in other apps. And this really pops up an Ecamm program window with a visual view of your Ecamm production in case you haven't got your main Ecamm program front and center. And that's great if you want to put that in the monitor. It's great for a confidence monitor and things like that. So that's always handy to have. The other thing I change is if I go over here to my video tab, I'll actually change my default source mode from camera, which is the default one, to blank. And the reason why I do that, let me just move that out of the way. We'll just get out of live demo mode for a second. The reason why I do that is because we get asked a lot of questions sometimes. Why do when I add a camera, I basically can't see the overlay that I've added or the camera or anything like that. And that's because the default source when you create a new scene is basically the camera that's selected. So I typically turn that off to make my life a little bit easier. And then you can just start to add things, whatever you want. Now, I've mentioned scenes and so on. So let's close the preferences down. So the two windows that you're going to spend most of your time in when you get Ecamm, when you're building your production, is your scenes, which is up here, and your overlays. So what are scenes and what are overlays? So scenes, think of scenes, for example, as a scene in a movie, a page in a book, or a slide in a presentation such as PowerPoint or Keynote. And overlays are the visual elements that you add to the scenes. So those visual elements, for example, could be text, graphics, could be music, could be cameras, whatever you want to build up your production. Effectively, you're taking your audience through a workflow. So if you're presenting a workshop, if you're presenting something on a live stream, then you want to have maybe some visual representation or visual elements to help you guide your audience through whatever you're talking about. You could just sit like this for an hour and a half, talk to your audience, have an intimate conversation, whatever you want. But the versatility in the power of Ecamm allows you to add these graphical elements to spice up your live stream. So today I'm going to show you how we add a few of those things, what those bits and pieces are to create a simple live stream production that I would typically look at. So I will be pausing and looking for questions as we go through that. In fact, let me just do that now. Let me just see if there's any questions. La 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 la. All right. No questions at the moment. All right, let's go back into live demo mode. So you can see here that I've actually got a scene already with a camera in there, and this is my main camera. So I'll just talk to you a little bit about cameras and overlays and things like that. At the moment, I've just got this main scene, and I've named it main camera, and over here I've got my overlays. Don't worry about the thing here. I'll talk to you about that in a second. This just allows me to draw on the screen, which I will do now, as you can see, but I'm not going to bother with that for a second. And then here I've just got my cameras and basically my overlay, which is a text element for comments. So let's just create a brand new scene. And down here in your overlays menu are all the graphical elements that you can add to a scene. So here we have an image, we have an animated overlay, screen share, text, different types of text. I'll explain those in a second. We've got some shapes, countdown timer, a web widget for adding websites and things like that, cameras and folders. And cameras and folders are very useful when we go through some automation and things like that later. If I just show you this view here, this is the main Ecamm window. Whatever you put in this window from a building scenes perspective is what your audience is going to see. Now you have some handy tools on the right hand side here with tooltips. If you just basically hover over any of these tools in the Ecamm window, you'll see that it pops up with a tooltip. So this is your show and hide switcher, graphics, sound levels, and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide these graphics for now, so it makes my life a little bit easier when I'm actually creating and setting up my scenes. So to do that, we'll just go into Window, and this control here is called Hide Main Window Controls. So we're just going to hide those. So even if I hover over here, you're not going to get these tools popping up. If you want them back, you just go back to Window and show the controls again. But I'm just going to leave it like this for now. So let's create a new scene. So let's hit the plus button here. And this is down here on the scenes overlay. You basically have a new empty scene. You can duplicate an existing one, and you can create some folders. And we'll talk about those in a second. So let's just create a new scene. It'll all go dark for a second. So I'm now going to go over here and add my first camera overlay, which is this plus button here. So new camera overlay. I click on this, and you'll see that it's going to pick a series or a camera that's already in my list. There's a ton of cameras listed here. I've got lots of different cameras connected, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on this little gear menu here and select the camera that I want. And I'm actually going to select, in this case, scroll all the way to the top, camera A. Now you may be saying, all right, I don't have a camera A in mind. They're all labeled with cam links and things like that. Well, this is where Camera Switcher is your friend, because Camera Switcher allows you to map all the various cameras and things that you have connected to your Mac and add them to a specific letter. So it's a really easy way of mapping cam link number 1, for example, with your DSLR or your mirrorless camera, Sony, whatever it might be, and you can map that to a letter, in my case, camera A. So I'll show you how that works. Let me just bring Camera Switcher up here and just get rid of this for a second. So if I bring Camera Switcher up and make it large and expand these, if we go to the first tab, which is your all sources, this is the list of all the cameras that I've got connected to my Mac. And I've got quite a few cameras because for doing demo purposes and things like that. So this is the main camera here. And then we've got the OBSBot Taylor down there somewhere, which is over there. There's a camera behind me. Doesn't really matter. For the purpose of this demo, there's a number of different cameras. Now, if you connect your cam links, for example, then this is not an issue with Ecamm. This is how the Mac works. Maybe if you've got 1 or 2 cam links connected, the camera that you select with the cam link number or the cam link reference, when you reboot your Mac, maybe that camera isn't the same one that you expect. So if you've got two cameras, maybe the one in scene A, or scene B, or whatever it might be, might not be the one that you've referenced before. So this is a good way of mapping those cameras very easily in your scenes. So if I go to the A/B setting here, what I've done is I've basically mapped all the cameras that I want to various letters. So that means if I'm building out my scenes, I just select camera A for all the ones that I want this main camera to be. Now, if you ever change camera, if you ever plug in something else and you say, well, actually, I want this behind the scenes camera now to be camera A, I can just basically switch that around, for example, right? So you can see now I've just switched that, and on the main window, I reference camera A, which is now a completely different camera. So it's a really easy way of mapping those cameras to letters to keep things a little bit easier and organized if you've got multiple cameras set up. You can still do the same thing as well for the tail area here. As you can see, I've got the OBSBot over there. So I could technically just say, well, camera A from now on is always going to be the OBSBot. And boom, now it's the OBSBot. I'm not going to do that because it's going to be following me around. So I'm going to go back to my main camera. Whoops, it's not that one. So many cameras, I don't even know what I'm doing. It's camera 4, Neil. There you go. See, this is why it gets confusing. So that's why I picked camera A in this particular scene to make things a little bit easier. So I'm just going to rename this scene. I'm going to call it, move that out of the way. Okay, and I'm going to just move that down here for a second to make it easier to see. Okay, so I'm going to do camera me. Okay, no problem. I'm just going to move these out of the way a second, just to make things a bit easier to navigate. All right, once I've got my camera in there, that's full screen, but you might want to have a camera, a piece of text, a background. You might want to make your camera look a bit fancy with borders and things like that. So I'm just going to use my mouse wheel and just slowly zoom out. And as you can see, as I'm zooming out, the camera is shrinking. You'll also notice as I'm moving the camera overlay around, you're getting these little guides that are showing you where the center points and the horizontal line are for the scene in particular. So that helps you reference and set up the cameras a bit more easily. You'll notice that there's a little border around this camera and some rounded corners, and I'll show you how you can configure that. So on this little pen tool here, when you click on this, this allows you to change all the parameters of this particular overlay. So in this case, we've got a border radius of 37, so that makes the rounded corners. But what I'll do is I'll actually just change the border to a color, and I'll make that a nice bright orange color so you can see. I can change the border width, make it as thick or as thin as I want. I'll just keep it at that right now. And then the corner radius is changing the borders, well, radius basically, of around my camera. Let's just get rid of that color a second. Other things that you can do is you can change the perspective of your camera, and you can I'll show you what I mean now. By moving this left or right, you can actually change the perspective. It's quite a nice view depending on what you want. If you just double click, it will snap back to the center position and 0 in that case. I'm not going to show you blend modes or things like that just for now, but I just wanted to show you some of the controls that you've got on your camera. Now, you might want this camera to be a different shape. By default, you can set it to wide, square, classic shape, circle, anything that you want on here. I prefer to use custom, and then I can sort of manipulate the corners and things like that. You'll notice as I'm grabbing the edge of the camera overlay, the arrows change to 2 arrows pointing out. That means I can sort of pinch and grab that, and now I can change the size. You can also crop the camera overlay and crop out the sort of sides if there's something that you don't want to see. So in this case, I'm just clicking the Option key, and you can see as I click the Option key, I'm now dragging the sides of my camera in and cropping those in a little bit more. So I'm just gonna leave it like that for now, and I'm just gonna pop it to the side. And as you see, as I'm popping it over to the left-hand side, you can see that it's also snapping to that particular position. So I've got my camera over here. What I'm trying to do here is create a scene with 2 people just to start with. So I've already got my main scene with my main camera, which is this one here. But now I want to actually create maybe a scene where I've got myself and a guest. So if I've got everything looking how I want in this particular camera view for me, I could actually just duplicate this really easily and then create one for a guest. So if I hit the the option button, and drag, this is just going to duplicate that camera overlay straight away, which is system-wide on the Mac anyway. The option key will allow you to duplicate anything. So I'm going to actually change the camera source and make this, let's say it's going to be my guest. But I don't have a guest at the moment. So what's nice here is I could potentially put a graphic in for my guest, which is a top tip that Doc and other people have used before. And that means that even if my guest hasn't arrived yet, I could put a nice little overlay or graphic or a picture of them in. And if they were to disappear for whatever reason, if the internet broke or something like that, then you would be able to see their little face in this view. So I'm just going to grab an image, and this will show you how to add images as well. So let me go to my demo assets. And it's important, I think, to keep things organized, especially when you're building out scenes. If you're building out those for yourself or for a customer or something like that, it's really good to keep them organized. So I've got mine all organized in images, music, video, and WebM files, which we'll talk about in a moment. So I'm just going to click on images here, and I'm just going to grab this placeholder of my cat, Martini. She's looking pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of crop and size this real quick so I can get this looking reasonable in this thing here. So I'm just going to grab that, put it there. And that'll do for now. Let me just pull that down. Now you might notice that this image is actually above the camera overlay. And that's because the overlays menu works on a layered principle. So just like Photoshop and all these other applications, anything that is actually on the top in the list is going to be on top in your scene. So I'm just going to drop this placeholder and pop it behind there. As you can see now, I can see the border, and then I'm just going to gently crop this in. I'm just going to grab it and just, oops, where's my mouse gone? Move that out of the way. There you go. Let me just crop that down a little bit there, like that. And actually, I'll just move this back up so I can see, because it's not easy to crop when there's something behind. And I'll just crop it down, and then move her up, and then just crop this a little bit as well. Like that. I can also make this look exactly the same as the camera overlay if I wanted to, but I'm just gonna crop it down and just leave it like that for now. I can also change this and make the corners round as well if I wanted to. So I'll just change the corner radius to make it look very similar. You get the idea. So there's my guest. Now, if I want to put a background in here, I can do the same thing. I'm just going to make this camera look better. Let's put it up there and put Martini up there as well. All right, that'll do for now. So we're both side by side. Let me just drop a little background in here as well. And if I just put a background in there, you'll notice that we've all disappeared. That's because the background is at the top of the layer. So I'm just going to drag that all the way down to the bottom. So now the background is basically underneath all of this settings, and therefore you can now set this up how you want by adding in different backgrounds, and you can even sort of crop this background out and things like that. So I'm just going to make it full screen for now. To stop you moving things around accidentally, like I typically do, like I get my mouse and I'm moving it around like this, quite irritating, you can actually just add this little padlock here which locks these in place. So now I can't actually move that background. You can see that it says the overlay is locked. I can do the same for the cameras, the placeholders, and anything. So that means that, excuse me, when you are playing around with your scene or adding new things to it, then it's not going to move around accidentally, which it typically does. I'm just going to go back out of live demo mode, go back to my first scene, and just see if there's any questions. There are questions. Let me just do a Q colon. Thank you for being Q colon. Oh no, Most of those are coming from Mr. Moderator, so let me just go and have a look if there's any questions. There was a question. Okay, so I think Paul can probably take this one. What are the updates at Ken and Glenn? So this is not relating to anything beta related. This is for the availability version, the GA version as we call it, of Ecamm Live. I'm not going to be discussing anything beta related until that beta is an official release. So maybe Paul can put some of those answers in there if he needs to, but it's not really... oh, he already said that we don't cover beta. Thank you, Paul, for answering. Can we go over to Ecamm for Zoom? When you enter another Zoom, you're invited Zoom call with Ecamm. I can touch on that a little bit if I have time. It's really a fundamentals series that I'm doing here, but let's see what we get. Any more questions? You're having echoes when using Zoom for Ecamm. There's quite a few things that can cause echo when you're using Ecamm for Zoom, depending whether you've got headphones in and a few things like that. If we get time for that later, we can go around with that. Okay, how to use multiple scenes with Ecamm Live. I purchased a stand after TikToking and wanted to use it with Ecamm. So you're talking about sort of dual monitors and things like that, right? Okay. All right. So you can use dual monitors. I mean, I'm using dual monitors right now. So I've got my Elgato monitor. I'm looking at you right now, and I'm using that as a confidence monitor. And there is a video preview mode or a video monitor mode that I can show you in a second. And then here, where I'm showing you my live demo mode, is my sort of second monitor. In fact, I've got 5 monitors in total, but anyway, that's for another day. So in order for you to get your second monitor being used with Ecamm Live, you can do a couple of things. You can drag your main Ecamm Live window, for example, and pop that into another monitor. You can just pop it around and I can move that into another monitor if you want. If you remember at the beginning of the demo, I mentioned in preferences that there is something called a program window. So this program window will pop up. In fact, if I just do it now, it might, as I navigate away. See, if I navigate away, you can see now there's a pop-up window. So this is the program window that when I navigate away from Ecamm Live, I just clicked on my desktop. That's what I mean by navigating away. That will allow you to use that as a confidence monitor if you want. So that's another way of using it. I'm going to close this down. The third way of doing that, if I just get out of my preferences, is if you go to Output at the top here, and then Video Monitor, you can see that you can select a video output monitor as a confidence monitor or as a representative view of what you're seeing in the Ecamm Live main window. So that's another way of using a second monitor with Ecamm Live. You can also, at your leisure, if you want, move any of these panels into another window. And I use an application called Moom. And Moom is a simple application that just memorizes your placements of your windows. Let me just move that program window out of the way. It memorizes the placements of your windows. These are your overlay panels, any of your Finder windows, anything like that on your Mac, and saves them in the various positions. That can be either multiple monitors, single monitor, whatever you want. So that's another great way of using Ecamm Live in combination with multiple monitors and using Moom to save those positions. So you can recall those positions at any time, especially if you're using different applications and different workflows. So hopefully that's answered your question about using multiple screens with Ecamm. If not, just let me know and so on. There is another question around bringing on a guest interview. My guest could hear me but not see me. Yeah, I think I may have tried to answer that question in the Facebook group for you, but there's a couple of things there. We might be able to take that offline later and take a look and try and answer that for you. So let's go back into live demo mode and let's go into this scene. So now I've got my scene side by side. We can also add text overlays, and we'll do that real quick. So we've got a text overlay here. There's 2 types of text overlays, dynamic and the new text box. Basically, the difference is one will have a fixed size. So basically if you try and drag the text box up and down, it's not going to change the text. And then the other one is a fixed text box size, which means that irrespective of how big you make the text, basically the text box isn't going to resize. But let me just show you. I'll just put my name. Do that. You can style the text however you want, of course. Change the color, change the font. I'm just going to keep it, oops, I'm going to keep it this font for now. I'm going to keep it all the same. Just going to add this. There's my little text overlay. I'm just going to drag that onto my name there. You can make this bigger by just pinching and dragging the side of it and so on. And then option drag. I can answer your question, John. I'm using Cursor Pro. There's two that people use, ProMouse and Cursor Pro. I had a few problems with ProMouse not behaving itself. Alec Johnson loves ProMouse. I've never really got on with it very well, so I sought out another version, and it's called Cursor Pro, and it also comes as a bundle with Keystroke Pro, which is what you're seeing with all the different Keystroke Pros as well. Martini. She is a princess. Okay, so we'll just put it like that. So these are your basic overlays, and as we switch scenes, you can actually transition this overlay and camera in together. I'll quickly show you how to do that. So for example, if we wanted to switch between scene A and scene B, main camera and camera me and guest, then I could have these transition in with a particular piece of animation. And I'll show you how to do that real quick. So let's just grab my names. I will say for here, we'll click on the gear menu, transition. For this one, I want to, we'll make them both fly in from the bottom. It's so much easier for now. But you've got many options. You can do left, right, bottom, top, spin. But I'll just fly these in from the bottom. So if I switch between scenes, and if you look at the name placeholders, if I click on this, they'll just both pop in from the bottom. You can do that with pretty much any overlay. So cameras can transition in and things like that. So there's a ton of different ways of making your presentations look animated and quite nice, depending on what you want. You'll notice that as I'm switching between scenes, there is a cross dissolve, and these are the default transitions that you can set up. If I just go to preferences, you can see under video that you've got these different types of transitions: slow cross dissolve, white flash, swipe. It's all about personal preference and personal taste here. So we'll click on this and so on. You get the idea. So that's the way that you can sort of switch between the transitions and things like that. Okay. The next thing I was going to talk about is some of the, I've already mentioned camera switches. Let's look at comment placeholders, some of the styling and so on, and the different types of things. So you'll notice that I'm bringing comments up from the comments and reactions down here. Now, these are all configurable as well, so you can style them how you want. And then every subsequent comment that you add to your production will also have that same style and branding. What I typically do is add a comment placeholder, which allows me to sort of size and position where I want these comments to be. And you can do this on a per scene basis. So let me show you what I mean by that. There's an option, first of all, that you should disable to start with. If you go into preferences and you go into general, you'll see down here, automatically hide comment overlays after 15 seconds. So I'm going to disable that for a second. And I'm just going to add a comment placeholder here. And you do that by going to, I can't remember where it is now. Overlays, I'm sorry. It's in overlays, add comment placeholder overlay. So let's click on that. And this gives you just a representative view of what all your comments are going to look like. And you can style them. So the icon can be resized. I'll make it bigger here. I'll just go into this pen tool, click on edit text, and let's change this color to be purple. Let's do that. And then let's make this text a different text. We'll make it electrize. Oops. Another good feature, just on the Mac basically, is that if you want to have your favorite fonts in a folder, you can just basically click on this button here, click on this, and you can give it a new style, My Fonts. And then any font that you have in your list, for example this one, you can just click this and drag it into My Fonts. Oh, I think I clicked it in new there. There you go. Into there, for example. Let me just drag that and put into My Fonts. You get the idea. So this means now you can just basically have a favorite list of fonts that you want. I've changed the entire style of this, but that will do for now. I'll just change this back to favorite fonts, bangers, make that a bit bigger. Done. So now we've changed the font of the name of the person. That isn't the best color. I saw Martin in the chat. He'd say, "Come on, Neil, you're better than this. You just need a better color." All right, I'm just going to make it back to orange again. It's so much nicer on a black background. There you go. So now we've got the viewer name and color. So that means if I get rid of this as my placeholder, and to hide and show overlays, it's just a little eye icon here. So you click on it and it will hide it. Doesn't delete it, just hides it from your scenes. And if I click on John, you can see the styling is now the font that we were changing. Never bother, John. This is what it's here for, to ask questions and things like that. Not a problem at all. Okay, so that's your comment placeholder overlays. And if I bring this on here, you'll see now that John is, the comment placeholder has been replaced by John. And you can basically copy that comment placeholder or comment. I'll just hit Control C, and then I just basically put this in here. And now we can actually style this somewhere else. We can actually put it here if we wanted to, and then as we bring it in, there you go. Okay, actually I should have put a comment overlay there first. Add a placeholder, pop it there like that, pop it there, and then get rid of that, and then hopefully that'll just pop it there. Yeah, so just make sure that you add the placeholders in the right place and then resize them as well. Okay. There are a ton of things that you can add as well. A number of questions that we do get asked is adding video and sound effects, and what's the difference between adding a video? When I add a video, it goes full screen. Why can't I hear the sound? Why can't I reposition the video? So I'll go over those in a second. Let's go and quickly have a look for other questions. Any hack to do an action replay? Not at this point, as far as I'm aware. I think there may be something in the works, but not in this version at the moment. Anything that you can do, you can actually, if you're doing a live broadcast, you can record the broadcasts, play them back at a later date, but that's a rolling file that's been recorded as we speak, so it's not something that you can get access to straight away. Okay. Question, how do you set up the chat feature of showing your audience, and how can this match your font design? Hopefully, that's answered the question what I showed you before. So that's how you can style it to your branding and so on. Okay. All right. Yes, please ask again to make the scenes window bigger or adjustable. You can make the scenes window bigger. I think you might be talking about the fonts though, right? So at the moment you can, I'll go into live demo mode. The fonts, you can actually, you can't change the font, but you can change the size and position of the window. But yes, the text remains the same from the menu perspective in the UI. It's not changeable at this point. Okay. Like the PowerPoint. Is that what you mean in terms of text? I guess that's what you mean in terms of text and making it bigger within the menu itself. All right, not at the moment. All right, let's add something else to this scene then. So we've talked about images. We can add backgrounds. We can add wallpapers. We've done that. But now let's talk about images, animated overlays, and things like that. So there's a couple of different things that you can do in terms of adding images, video, and so on to your production. So let's go and pick on the video files. I'm just going to turn this volume down, so hopefully it's not going to be too loud. If I drag, let me just create a new scene to make it easy. I'll just call it video. And in this particular scene, I'll just drag this down here. You can also drag between scenes. So, you can click on the scene, and you can click, and then you can just drag it around, for example. So I'm going to put video on the bottom. You can't see me at the moment. I'm just going to drag this video file, which is Doc and Katie from the flow. And if I just drag this straight into here, it's going to be full screen. You'll hear it playing in the background. So the deal with this is now you can't really do anything with it because this scene is basically locked and it's a video file. So the video is going to play full screen. It's going to play with audio, no problem. If you want to get rid of this video, just go to source at the top and change it to blank. So that gets rid of that completely. Now, the problem with that is if you wanted to resize the video, then you can't just by dragging a video file in there. So dragging it straight into the main window here is going to play it at full screen and is then going to take over that, and you're not going to be able to add any other overlay. If you took the same video file and dragged it into your overlays panel, you're going to get a pop-up message and it's going to say, do you want to add this as an animated overlay with no sound, or do you want to play it full screen with audio? So if you add it as an animated overlay, you can now resize it. You can do what you want with it. You've got some controls here and so on. Let's just unlock that. But what you can't do is you can't hear anything. So what you need to do is you need to create something called a WebM file. And a WebM file is a HTML or web-based compatible video file that allows Ecamm and other software to be able to play these video files, be able to resize them, change the border, perspective, do whatever you want to them, but also have them play with sound. It also supports things like transparencies and stuff like that. So you can create a file, and Paul has put out the application. It's called Shutter Encoder. I did a video recently on my channel as well. Doc's got one as well on Ecamm, all about how to use Shutter Encoder for changing basically the format of a video file, in this case from MP4 to a WebM. So I'll just change my preferences back so the comments disappear after 15 seconds, which is down here. Click on that. All right. So the WebM file, for example, you'll use Shutter Encoder and you'll throw this file in down here, and then it'll create this new WebM file there. So I'm just going to grab that and pop it in here. And now, oh, there's Martin. So now we've got Katie and Doc talking away. We can do what we want with this file. Just like any other overlay, we can click on the gear menu. We can add a border to it. We can add a color to it. We can just style it exactly how we want, like that. We can change the corner radius. We can also make it transparent. Get rid of that. Excuse me, I think I've just changed the transparency there. What did I do with that? I've messed it up, haven't I? What did I do with that file? I don't know what I did. I messed it up. Let me just drag it in. Okay. I don't know what I did there. It is getting late. All right, you get the idea. We can also change the perspective. We can crop it. We can do whatever we want to this. This is basically now treated as a overlay of any kind. So as we could change and resize and do what we want with other overlays, we can do the same with this. So make sure that if you're adding video files and you want to play them with sound and you want to resize them, change the perspective, add borders, make them your own, then you need to convert them into a WebM file in order to do that and make it work for you. All right, let's look at some of the questions. It's just Neil Fireman. It's just my name. Just search for my name, you'll find me. Yes, and as Paul said, if there are any requests and so on, make those requests to the Facebook beta group. There's a lot of activity on there at the moment. And if you want to get the beta, just go to ecamm.com/beta. There's a ton of new features, enhancements to the software. And the good news about Ecamm is that you can run both the general available working fully fledged version that I'm using right now in conjunction with the beta version. They can run side by side. They share profiles, they share preferences and things like that. So you can go ahead and test without worrying about breaking anything in your live production and so on. Although I have to say the beta is really, really stable, always very stable. And I typically run the beta on my live streams, recordings and things like that. But I'm not running it today because for demo purposes, we always run our demos with the general available version. Let's look at any more comments. Thank you, Paul. Okay. What else do we want to add to this? All right. So, well, what about screen shares? What about sharing your screen, adding websites and things like that? So there's a couple of ways. If you want to add a website to your Ecamm live production, the first way is the old-fashioned way. It's not old-fashioned. Is if you want to basically share a portion of your screen. So there's a screen share overlay, that you can add. And if you go to your overlays menu here, let's create a new scene and just call it screen share, like that. I'm going to drag it down. You look for this icon down here, which looks like a monitor, and it says new screen share overlay. Click on this, and you will get a choice of monitors. Mine, I think, is the third one. There it is. Okay. So you can show different types of displays. So Ecamm fully supports multi-monitors, as you can see, and you can basically just resize and style this how you want. The good news about Ecamm is that you can actually copy the layout from one overlay and paste it to another. So for example, let's just go to me and guest. I'm just going to copy the style. So it'll be an orange border with rounded corners. And if I just go back to my screen share, and if I right click and do paste settings, it's now going to, or should have, taken the settings for that. It's because I don't have a border enabled on here. Let me just do border color on that. There you go. But it's kept the rounded corners for you. So you can style the elements how you want and then copy and paste them. Now with this screen share, it'll default to the shape of the primary display that I'm sharing. So in this case, I'm actually just going to do custom, and then I'm just going to change the display how I want. So this is just a screen share, and I'm just going to crop in a little bit on this side. I'm going to get rid of the clock because we don't want that. And because it's a website, I'm just going to crop in here. You can take your time and do this better than me, but obviously time is of the essence. So I'm just going to position this like that. I'm going to throw in, for giggles, a background. I'm going to switch it from top to bottom so it sits there. And I'm also going to put a little shadow on it, although you can't see that on here because my shadow is black. But I'll just change it real quick. Color, make the shadow white. There you go. Marvelous. So I'm going to go over to the screen that this is on now, and I'm just going to, this is a screen share. So this is a portion of my screen that I'm sharing. This is the Ecamm community site. So if you want some help, support, sign up for the newsletter, things like that, go to ecamm.com/community. And did you know that Ecamm has a calendar? So you can find out all about these shows and things like that, however you want. I'm sure Paul will put some links in for you. If you want to sign up and subscribe to the calendar, then you'll never miss an event and a show again. Wonderful. I'm going to add a camera overlay. Here, it's kept the settings as before. I'm just going to put a camera here, which is me. Camera A, make it a circle. Just for giggles, you can spend as much time on this as you like to get it looking cool. But there you go. Camera overlay and screen share in your scene all together, and then lock it all up. And once you lock the scene up, you're not going to make any mess with it. So there is a very simple screen share overlay with a background with a camera added as well. Let's go. A couple of questions coming in. Go to main camera. Turn off live demo. Where can I get those high quality backgrounds? I created them on Midjourney, actually. So I used Midjourney, said create abstract background. There's Canva. There's lots of other places that you can actually get nice quality backgrounds from. Try and create them yourself, but I use Midjourney to create my backgrounds. All right. Oh yeah, Paul has put in the comments there about the calendar as well. Yeah, so the mailing list is great because you get all the calendar links and stuff like that. Okay. Let's go on and talk a little bit about another way of adding a website real quick called a web widget overlay. So down here, let me go onto live demo mode again. You have another overlay called web widget. So it's the little globe. Click on this. And yes, I was using Streamalive before. Let's just do ecamm.com. So this is a web widget. You can just give it a name, ecamm site, for example. So it's a browser, not a fully fledged browser, but it's a browser with most of the bells and whistles that you would expect. It doesn't support some scripting and so on, but for 99% of your navigation purposes, you can easily use this to navigate through a website. So you just give it a name and a URL. So I'm just using ecamm.com. I typically say keep running, which means it's going to poll the website from time to time, and then click on high resolution mode. Keep the width and height the same. It doesn't really matter. And frame rate, if you're not running video, just keep it at 15 frames a second as an example. So click on add web widget overlay. And now it's going to load the website in a handy overlay that is an actual fully fledged browser. So I'm just going to cover my face because that's always good with this web widget. And you notice at the bottom there are a couple of little tools, the little hand tool, little switch, and the left and right and refresh. So when the toggle switch is to the left, it means you can click and drag around this overlay. You can resize it, you can crop, do whatever you want. There's a crop, right, but I'm not going to crop in this case. So that gives you the opportunity to position this web widget however you want in your production. And then if you toggle it to the right, now you can interact with this web page. So you can click on links, you can look at support, you can go to blog, and it's going to load up the website just as before. These are little sort of web tools, so you can go left and go back to the original page, and then go right to go to the next page, and then refresh is the little refresh button here. So now you've got a fully fledged web widget running, and that gives you the opportunity when you're showcasing a website, somebody's presentation, whatever it might be, you can run pretty much anything in here. I've actually run Canva and a few other things in here before. Let's just hide that for a second. So it's really easy to create a web widget, add your website that you want, and pop it in there with all your sort of overlays and other things like that. I'm just going to pause, get some water. If you've got any questions, throw them in there. I'll talk about Zoom in a sec. I'm not sure how much I can show with Zoom. Well, it'll let me look at, but that's fine. Oh yes, good point, Paul. There you go. All right. So let's look at other things. We'll look at groups and some best practices and things like that in a minute as well. Did you go over how some have used a countdown time as people are waiting to start your show with music normally? Okay, I can do that real quick. So a countdown timer is handy for building anticipation for your live show, getting things ready in the background. And Ecamm comes with a fully featured countdown timer, which is this little overlay here, which looks like a clock. So click on that, and you've got a countdown timer overlay. There's a couple of things you can do with it. The first one is that you can, well, is the default that most people use it for, is countdown, excuse me, countdown for an amount of time. So you set the amount of time that you want it to count down for, and it will do that. But you then count down to a time every day, count down to a time a day, use it as a clock or a stopwatch, whatever. So the good thing about countdown timers is that they can provide an action at the end of them. What I mean by that is when it reaches 0, it can do something instead of just sitting there at 0. So we can auto start. Oops, I am not in demo mode. I do apologize. I've got my confidence monitor here and I'm not in demo mode. I'm so sorry. Let me go back. Was it? Yep. Right, we'll start again. Play. Demo mode. Apologies, Paul. Thank you. 15 seconds delay on YouTube. Nightmare. All right, so I will now add a countdown timer. New countdown overlay. Click on the button here. So with a countdown overlay, as I mentioned, you can do a number of things. Countdown for an amount of time, every day, date and time, clock, stopwatch. Okay. And it can auto start. So when you fire up your scene, it'll automatically start to count down. And then you've got a couple of options. One, you can change the duration, or and then you can also say go to next scene when you're finished. So if you click on this here, once it reaches a certain, once it goes to 0, it will then advance to the next scene. So we'll just set it for like a minute, like that. And I'll make it a little bit bigger. You can style this countdown timer however you want as well. I'm just going to pop it here in a minute. So once it reaches 0, it's going to go down to the next scene, which is going to be myself and Martini. And the other question was, you can play music. So yes, you can add some music. I'm just going to bring this music into here. You can drag this music into the scene. This is royalty free. And where is my music gone? There it is. I'm not sure if you can play it there. So it's going to come through in your sound effects. And if I bring the windows back, you can see the Windows controls. You can see here on the window controls that the music is now playing in the background. And you can actually adjust the volume of the music. And the music will stop when the scene ends. So as we go to the end, 3, 2, 1. The music stops. Hello, welcome to me and Martini. So you get the idea. So that's how you would use a countdown timer in that configuration. Let me just go back to this. I'm just going to get rid of the music. So you can just click the X to get rid of the music here. And then the countdown timer, you can actually pause it so it doesn't do anything, or let's just get rid of it. Okay. So that's how you would basically add music to a scene with a countdown, and then the countdown will go to the next scene. You can do many things with the countdown timer. You can obviously use it as a hidden feature, so you can hide the countdown timer, and then you can have some graphics on there. You don't have to have the countdown timer, then it'll automatically move to a next scene. There's lots of different little tweaks and workflows that you can use with these countdown timers. I'll just hide the main window controls. Let's have a look at any questions. Yes, and you can hide the window controls by clicking Command+. As well as Paul said, there is also a list, I think, Paul, isn't there, of shortcuts that people can reference. So because there's a manual as well that you can download with Ecamm Live, and there's a number of different shortcuts in there. It's really handy to know, to get familiar with the application. I just like showing you all these different views because I can't remember half the shortcuts as well. I'll have a lot of Stream Deck buttons actually that I use for my workflow. So I just press the Stream Deck button and it does its thing. Yes, there's the Ecamm Live Owner's Guide. Very cool. All right, and there is a list for all the shortcuts as well. So thank you, Paul, for putting those in. We're nearly getting to the top of the hour, but let's just quickly mention Zoom. So not very recent now. Ecamm for Zoom has been out for a while, and it's used a lot for getting people on your Ecamm production, adding guests, and also just using it all the time as I do now with all my Zoom calls. Everything is in Ecamm for Zoom. So let me just close a few of these windows down. A second, let's just go to Window. So all the windows here, as I mentioned, these panels can be brought up and visible into your Ecamm production by all these different shortcuts. You can see down here, Zoom is the one right at the bottom. So let's just click on Zoom. And in my case, I've linked my Zoom account. Let me show you some of the Ecamm Live preferences for Zoom real quick. So Zoom has its own tab over here. And there's a couple of options that you can select with Ecamm for Zoom. And I'll just go over these real quick. So a couple of things that I don't typically do is auto admit any of the Zoom participants when they join, and so on. And auto add Zoom participants as a camera source. I don't do that as well. There are some videos on the Ecamm channel on how to set up Ecamm for Zoom and bring people in as guests and so on. But I will just go through a few things real quick. You can also show Zoom guest names on as automatic. So when you bring a guest on as a camera overlay into your production, you can select this option and the names will automatically appear. A great feature is this active speaker camera, which means that anybody who's part of your Ecamm production, you can have 8 people brought into your Ecamm production using Zoom. That doesn't mean it's limited to 8 people in the Zoom call. You can have 100 people in the Zoom call, but you can actually just bring 8 people on. That's the limit at the moment as camera sources, as guests, as a panel, for example, using Zoom, and so on. The main one to draw your attention to is the Zoom audio processing, which means that Ecamm can basically run and take over all the audio controls for you within Zoom with regards to the quality of the audio and so on. It doesn't take part in any of Zoom's audio processing, and you've got a couple of options to change that. You can disable it, which means that all the Zoom settings are overwritten and Ecamm will do its thing, or you can set your own in your personal Zoom settings, and if you just click on this, it will bring up your Zoom settings, as you can see here. So you can turn on things like echo cancellation, Zoom background noise if you're in a noisy environment. So you can change all those settings in Zoom. So with regards to the question that came up around sort of echo and so on, you've got to make sure that some of these settings are correct and do some testing beforehand. If the guest can't hear you, then there may be a reason for that, which I'll go into in a second. Because when you bring a guest on, you may have your Zoom guests muted in the sound panels. So over here in the sound panels, each group of guests that come on, so this is a master control for all Zoom guests. If this is muted, then even if you bring a guest on into your Ecamm production via Zoom, they can hear you, but you won't be able to hear them. It's effectively like having them muted on their end, but you've got a master control here. It's a master mute. So basically, everybody that's in the Zoom call will get muted if you basically click on this button here. So check that as well if you're not hearing your guests coming in. And also look at how your Ecamm Live preferences are set for your Zoom audio processing. I typically set this to disabled, let Ecamm do its thing, because Ecamm will use its built-in virtual mic and so on to be able to use that with Zoom. And the other thing to check is in your audio, the speakers. So anything that's set here is what Ecamm is going to play back to you. So I've got my Rodecaster over here. My headphones are plugged into my Rodecaster. So anything that I play in Ecamm, anything that you see in these sound level panels, sound effects, Zoom guests, even myself, because I've got a confidence monitor playing so I can hear my own voice just to make sure things are working, will be played through whatever default device you've got set here. So there's a few things with audio that you've got to check, particularly with Ecamm for Zoom, but there is a lot of good information on the Ecamm website, lots of tutorial videos walking you through how to bring guests in with Ecamm for Zoom and other things. For me, I don't use interview mode anymore. Everything that I do with regards to bringing guests in, the shows that I produce, and for my own stuff, I use Ecamm for Zoom. For me, it works really well. It's quite flawless, and it's just an easier, it's an easier experience for the guests as well, because everybody's used to Zoom, and it's much easier to bring people on using that as well. All right, we're coming up to the top of the hour. So I'm going to put a call out for questions as I go on to this very last quick piece of housekeeping. So if I go back to preferences and we do recording a second. So Ecamm has the ability to record your broadcast. I'm doing it right now. And also has the ability to record up to 3 of your camera sources at the same time as isolated files or ISO files. It's great if you want to repurpose the content, you want to use those camera sources in editing software later. So depending on your workflow, depending on if you've got guests on multiple cameras and you want to sort of edit later, then you can check these as well. Ecamm will also record all your Zoom guests that you bring into your Ecamm production. So that makes it much easier again for repurposing if you just want to create a vertical video later of the guest and that's isolated from the rest of the production. It's a great way of being able to use that. So check these if you want to have your guests and your cameras recorded. Just a word of caution, just use these wisely because obviously every file is going to be recorded as a separate file on your machine. You must have disk space in order for it to record, and you must have a reasonably spec'd Mac to do that as well. It's putting a lot of pressure on your Mac from a I/O perspective, input-output resources on your disk and so on. So all things that you add will consume memory depending on how you've got your cameras set up and things like that. So just bear that in mind when you're setting up that. Also, a nice feature that I like is down here at the bottom, record only prompt for file name, which means when the recording ends, you can basically be prompted and you can create a new file name, which is super good as well. Another quick bit of housekeeping. I would always recommend that when you're building out your Ecamm scenes that you create folders. And the folders is this little button here. Click on this and we'll just say run of show. Incidentally, a run of show is just a term used to describe your run of show. Basically, a run of show is how the show is going to run from start to finish based on what you've got. So I would just start to put my scenes in there as an example for the run of show, and then you can collapse that and have multiple folders in your scenes. Now you may want to use the same Ecamm setup, and I'll mention profiles in a second, for your multiple shows. So you can have podcast run of show here, gaming run of show here, and so on. So you can create different folders for different shows. My personal view is that I like to have a separate profile or instance of Ecamm per show. And profiles are a way of organizing your shows into a self-contained file. So whilst it's fine to do it here, it's also good practice, in my opinion, to have a separate profile per show. I've heard some people that have 100 scenes in one profile, and that's fine, but these profiles can be quite big as well because profiles do save audio files and other components with it. So if you've got a lot of sort of high quality backgrounds and other things, the profiles can be quite big, gigs in size in some cases. So as a part of housekeeping, I would always create a separate profile per show. In here, I've got a number of different shows. I can't export or show you or switch them whilst I'm actually live, but you can export your current profile once you've built your Ecamm production out and save it somewhere safe. Save it in a shared drive, cloud drive, or something like that. I wouldn't run the profiles from a shared drive or a cloud instance. Copy them locally and then double click and then the profile will open. So you can easily store these profiles on your machine. If you've got a lot of profiles, then you may have to look through them, but you can see all profiles are listed here at the bottom, and then the most recent ones are in the middle. They're a little bit grayed out, but use profiles is a great way of organizing. And you can also save and export individual scenes between profiles. You can actually just click on this scene here, and I can just drag it into my desktop. And then it's actually disappeared behind another window. But once that scene has been exported like this, you can switch to a new profile, grab that scene and just double click and bring it back into Ecamm. So a great way of maybe switching scenes and switching overlays between different profile sets as well. That's just a great sort of way of doing that. I would highly recommend profiles, folders, a profile per show. Again, it's entirely up to you. You may only have 4 scenes in your particular production, and that's fine. And you won't need to switch between profiles. But if you've got clients and you're working for them and doing remote production, then you may want to have a copy of the show, the profile on your machine as well. All right, I'm going to do last call for questions before I wrap up. It's getting close to my bedtime. It's 8 o'clock in the evening here. Just kidding. But if you do have a question before we go, let me know. Don't forget as well to check out all the links that Paul has kindly put in the chat. There is a ton of resources on the Ecamm website, also the Ecamm YouTube channel. There's loads of tutorials from some great people on there, covering a whole range of stuff. We've got the Facebook groups as well for the beta and the main Ecamm community, so feel free to post a question in there. There's also a Discord channel. There are a ton of ways to get in touch with us, so feel free. It's a friendly group. We love getting questions. We do our best to answer them. It's all safe community here, so come in, ask your questions, let us know your thoughts around Ecamm, and as Paul's mentioned, any sort of queries or any things that you want to see in futures, then post them to the Facebook group, because that's where new enhancements and things get added. We have a question. Okay, I purchased themes and templates from one of your Ecamm fan members. How would I upload the templates into Ecamm? Yeah, so Paul has just answered the question. You should just be able to double click on them and add them. It depends what format they're in. If they are in like a demo format like this I've got here, for example, like an image, a PNG, you can just drag anything you want, you know. You can drag any of these into Ecamm like that. Ooh, how awful. Let me just get rid of that. So you get the idea. You can bring these in. See, I haven't locked my scene, and looks what happens. Let me just get rid of that there. So you should just be able to drag them in. It's pretty easy to do that. And if they're in an actual profile format, sometimes they come in as an Ecamm profile format. Then if that's the case, unzip it, double click, and it will load as a separate profile onto your Ecamm production. So that should be pretty easy. Any other questions? All right. I'll give it 15 seconds because that's the delay between me asking the question and anything coming in. But if not, I think we're good. I'm just going to put my main window controls on there. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to help you out. Thank you for all the questions and comments and so on. Check out the calendar for the next demo show and all the other shows that Ecamm produce. It's a great community, a great ton of resources available. So if there's no questions, until next time, take care, have a nice weekend. See you all soon. Bye for now.